Have you ever wanted to play Airsoft but just don't know where to start? This guide has got you covered. What is up guys, it's Jordan and welcome to this new mini-series I'm going to be hosting. This mini-series is going to consist of 5 different episodes which are 100% going to set you up to start playing Airsoft the right way. In this series I'm going to be teaching you about budgeting, good equipment, rules and safety, and all the other things you need to get into Airsoft the right way. And to not make the same mistakes I did when I started playing Airsoft. Alright, let's get into it. In episode 1, we're gonna talk about budgeting and buying your very first Airsoft replica. But before we do that, let me give you some critical advice. Don't go out and drop hundreds of dollars on your Airsoft replica when you haven't even played Airsoft in the first place. Make sure you go to a local field and play with some rental kits before you buy anything. A rental kit will set you back about $40 to $60, but will save you hundreds if you decide that Airsoft is just not for you. Also, try playing a few different games with some different Airsoft replicas. This way you'll get to know the replicas and get to know what you really like. So when you finally buy your first replica, you'll exactly know what you want. Alright, let's say you've played a few games and you've actually had a blast. Now you're ready to buy your very first Airsoft replica. So, where do you start? The first thing you need to think about is to set a budget. I wish I had done this when I first started because I ended up spending way too much on tactical gear and things like that, and spending way too less on my actual replica, which meant I had to spend a lot more money upgrading and fixing my first replica. This is not something you want to do when you're just starting out. You just want to play games with your favorite replica and not think about it too much. I would say the minimum budget to starting Airsoft right is about $400 to $500. This will get you the bare minimum you'll need to get a good experience. But a recommended budget would be $700 and above, so you can get a really nice kit. How would you distribute this budget? Well, I would say use the 70-30 rule. Spend 70% on your replica and 30% on tactical gear. This budget will get you a reliable primary replica, and it will also leave some budget for some essential gear like boots, clothing, and maybe a chest rig or a plate carrier. Now, I want to point something out. If you've played some games with a rental kit, did you have a sidearm? And if you did, then how much did you actually use it? What I found is I didn't actually use my sidearm that much, and I would have been way better off spending like $150 or $200 more on my primary replica than I would have done on getting a pistol. Now, if you have a little bit of a bigger budget, I would say about $800 plus, you could get a sidearm if you really wanted to. Then I would use the budget of 50, 30, 20. So 50% on your primary, 30% on your secondary, and 20% on tactical gear. But something I want to say is only go this route if you really want a sidearm. If you have the bigger budget and you don't really want to get a sidearm, I would say spend even more money on your primary replica, because the more money you spend, the better it gets. Alright, now that you have a budget in mind, let's look at some of the replica options. You might have already searched some Airsoft web shops or things like that, and you could probably see that there are a lot of options available. So let's break them down into 4 different types. Number 1 is spring replicas. Spring replicas are mostly seen in sniper rifles and shotguns, but they're not really the replica for beginners. Of course, with a spring replica, you'll need to cock back the spring every time you want to fire. This feature alone makes them way harder to play with than something that can automatically fire. So I would not recommend this type of replica for beginners. I know there are some spring-powered assault rifles available, but those just suck and you don't even need to think about those. Alright, the second type of replica is GBB, or gas blowback. These are mostly found in sidearms, and while they're the most realistic type of replica, I would not recommend them for beginners as they take a lot more maintenance than some of the other options. There are also GBB assault rifles available, but I would not recommend them as, like I said, they take a lot more maintenance, their mags are really expensive, and mostly the mags will have a lot less capacity than just a AEG mag, which I'm gonna get into a little bit later. Now, the third type is HPA, or high pressure air systems. These are the creme de la creme of Airsoft, but that comes with one drawback. These things are very expensive. They work like paintball guns with airsoft tanks in the stock or on your back connected with a hose. Now, these types of replicas are really nice because they allow for a fast trigger response, a long range and great accuracy. But of course, that all comes with a cost. A quality HPA system will set you back at least $1,500 and most of the times over $2,000 to $2,500. So I would not recommend starting out with them. Alright, the fourth and final type is AEG, or Airsoft Electric Guns. Now these are what you want as a beginner. They are relatively budget friendly, easy to maintain, and they just do the job. They work with LiPo batteries and an electric motor that pushes a piston forward, creating an air pocket that fires off the round. Now, like I said, these are easy to maintain, budget friendly, and these are just the type of replica you want to go with when you're just starting out. Of course, when starting out, the choice is yours, but I would say go with an AEG. Alright, now that we've chosen what type of replica we want to choose the platform. Now, although it can be tempting to go with like a PPSH, FAMAS, or even a Mark 46, I would not recommend doing so. Now, what I would recommend is going with an M4 or AK type of replica, just because they are most common and widely used in Airsoft. Also, they provide the most spare parts and upgrades, and they will also, of course, give you the best bang for your buck. So go with an M4 or an AK. As for brands, I would say go with the Crytek for a high-end and very durable replica. Go with the G&G armament replica if you want to go for the best bang for your buck. So really budget-friendly prices, but also great durability. The third option is ICS Airsoft, which makes really nice replicas which are very easy to maintain. So make sure to choose wisely. Alright, now that you've chosen your replica, let's look at some essential items you're gonna need to play Airsoft. First one is BBs. Make sure to always go with quality BBs, as some lower quality BBs or cheap ones can damage your Airsoft replica, and that's just not what you want. If you're going with a little bit of a more budget-friendly Airsoft gun and you actually play a lot indoors and things like that, 0.2 gram BBs will just be fine. If you're getting a little bit of a more higher end replica and are playing a lot outside maybe, where you need a little bit more range, I would say go for a 0.25, 0.28 or even a 0.30 gram, which will give you a lot more range, straighter flights, and will be just nicer. Make sure to check your field rules to know what are the maximum BB weights, and make sure to check the rules if you need biodegradable BBs or just normal ones. Biodegradable ones will be allowed everywhere and will be a little more expensive than just normal plastic ones, but you'll be able to play anywhere you want, especially in like the Netherlands or Belgium where I play. Bio BBs are always mandatory, so make sure to check that with your local field. Alright, the next thing is, for AEG replicas at least, a battery and a charger. Most replicas come with or without a LiPo battery, and mostly they come without a charger. So make sure to get a high quality LiPo battery. I would say go for 1000 milliamp hours to maybe 3000, that will be the max. Make sure it fits in your replica, and make sure it's 7.4 volts or 11.1. Don't go below or higher because they will break your replica. As for chargers, go with a smart charger that can charge and discharge your batteries to make sure they are long lasting and will never fail you. Alright, the next essential item is some extra magazines. Most replicas come with either 1 or 2 mid-cap magazines, which will hold about 100 to 150 rounds, which might sound like a lot, but especially when you're starting out, you're gonna need to fire a lot, so I would recommend getting some extra magazines. PTS makes some really high quality ones, but they're a bit more expensive. If you don't want to spend that much money on your magazines, then just go with the brand your replica came from, as the magazines will be the same as they were delivered with that, and they will mostly be a little bit cheaper than some higher quality ones. Some replicas come with a cleaning rod, but if they don't, I would definitely recommend getting one, as sometimes BBs can get stuck in your barrel or things like that, and you'll need to clean it out. Also get some lubricant, because you might need to lube up your replica from time to time, and it's just handy to have already. How to maintain your replica I will explain in the coming episodes, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Now the last thing to get is of course eye and face protection. Of course, some good quality eye and face protection are essential when you're playing Airsoft, because they're mandatory on most fields. Especially the eye protection is almost always mandatory. So make sure to get a good quality pair, and if you can't decide which one yet, then stay tuned for episode 2, because we'll explain there. Today in episode 2 we're diving into the most important aspects of Airsoft, which is rules and safety. Now I know, it might not sound as exciting as talking about replicas or gameplay, but trust me, if you don't know Airsoft rules and safety, you will not last long on the field. And even worse, you could get hurt or hurt someone else.
Oh, that sucked!
And that's just not what we want here. So let's just make sure that doesn't happen. Let's get into rules and safety. So why is safety important? Well, airsoft is all fun and games, but you're still dealing with some high velocity BBs flying around on the field. So if you don't take the right precautions, airsoft can lead to some serious injuries. The good news, airsoft is some of the safest combat sports out there, as long as you follow the rules, of course. So what's the number one cause of airsoft injuries? And no, it's not broken legs or broken arms, it's the lack of eye protection. If you take nothing else from this video, then take this. Never ever remove your eye protection when in a game area. Just a single BB hitting your eye can cause permanent blindness, and that's not an exaggeration. That brings us to the very first major rule. Always wear eye protection. Most fields require NSI rated impact resistant goggles as a minimum. Regular sunglasses or cheap safety glasses just won't cut it. You'll need properly rated goggles designed for airsoft. The brand I'm recommending is Block Tactical. I'm not sponsored or anything by them, but I just really like them and I use them myself. They're a bit more on the expensive side, but they will never fog up and they're just really nice to play with. So look into them. Now, while goggles protect your eyes and will always be mandatory, something I can really recommend is also wearing a lower face mask. A lower face mask will protect your teeth and make sure that they don't get shut out. I've seen way too many players getting their teeth shut out and just missing a chip of their front teeth. And I can tell you, but you probably know already, the dental bills are not cheap and it can hurt a lot. So make sure you protect your mouth as well. Lower face masks can be bought as cheaply as like $15 and they will save you on dental bills massively. If you want to know more about face protection, I've got a full video on it right here in the top corner. So make sure to watch that after this one. Alright, rule number 2 is put your replica in safe and keep your finger off the trigger. Now this is basic firearm safety, but it applies to airsoft as well. Never keep your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to fire. Your finger should always rest at the side of your gun if you're not actively firing. Also make sure your replica is set to safe mode if you're not in a combat area. Most replicas have a safety switch on the side or on the back of the gun, and make sure to use it. Accidental discharges happen all the time and you don't want to be responsible for hitting someone at close range because you weren't paying attention. So make sure to keep your replica on safe. Alright, let's talk about the safe zone. Most airsoft fields have a designated safe area where people come to reload, take off their masks and chat in between games. This is not the place to be messing around. So a few steps to do before stepping into a safe zone. Make sure to remove your magazine, make sure to fire a few shots in a clearing barrel just to make sure the chamber's empty, put your replica on safe and optionally add a barrel cover. This ensures no accidental shots are fired when people have their masks off. Alright, let's talk about one of the things that can ruin an airsoft game instantly. It's not calling your hits. Airsoft is a gentleman's game, and unlike, for example, paintball where you can see the hits, airsoft BBs don't leave marks. So that means it's up to each player to honestly call their hits when they get hit. If you feel a BB hit you, call it. Raise your hand, shout hit, and walk back to the spawn zone. Now trust me, nothing ruins an airsoft game faster than cheaters not calling their hits. So make sure to call it. If you see someone not calling their hits, don't go shouting at them or calling them out. Just let the referees or marshals know. They will look at it and make sure that the cheater either complies with the rules or goes home. Alright, the next point is minimum engagement distance. Different airsoft fields have different rules on how close you can shoot someone. If an opponent is too close, instead of firing, you should call out bang and eliminate them without actually firing. For indoor airsoft, semi-automatic is usually mandatory.
Hey, that's full auto in building, bro.
I'm not full auto, it's not full auto.
That's not full auto?
This is. That's full auto.
Damn, bro.
Full auto shots at close range can be really painful and they're just unnecessary. So make sure to comply with those rules. Alright, the next rule is don't blind fire. Blind firing is when you stick your replica across a corner without actually looking over the barrel. This is extremely dangerous and also unfair. You could hit someone at close range, maybe even in the face, which is just very unnecessary. And it's unfair because you don't give your opponent the chance to hit you. And like I said before, Airsoft is a gentleman's game, so you want to comply with those rules. Always make sure to look over the barrel and have a clear line of sight when firing. Alright, next one. Most fields have FPS or feet per second limits that prevent injuries. Those limits depend on which field and which country you're playing in. So make sure to check out those rules before you come to the Airsoft event. I can also highly recommend getting your own chronometer, which is that little tiny box where you shoot through to measure those limits. If you get one for yourself, you can test out your replicas at home and make sure you're within the limits before going to a field day. Alright, the last point is just be respectful and have fun. Airsoft is meant to be fun. It's a game of honor, strategy and teamwork. And you really don't want to be that guy that just ruins the game for everyone. So be respectful to other players, listen to marshals, and if you see other players struggling, help them. Airsoft is a community, and the more we help each other, the better the games get. Alright guys, that's the end of episode 2. Now that you know all the essential rules and safety tips, you're ready to hit the Airsoft field without making rookie mistakes. In the next episode, episode 3, we're gonna dive into gear and accessories and look at what's necessary, what's just hype, and how to build the perfect starter Airsoft loadout. Today, in episode 3, we're getting into something that every single Airsoft player gets excited about. Gear and accessories. Now, I know when first starting Airsoft, it's tempting to go all out and buy the coolest Airsoft loadout you can find. But I'm here to make sure that you spend your money wisely. Some gear will be absolutely essential, while others are just nice to have. And to be honest, a lot of it out there is either just nice to have or even very unnecessary. So make sure you don't make the mistakes. Alright, let's break it all down to make sure you're fully equipped for your first Airsoft games without wasting any money. Alright, before we even talk about tactical vests, plate carriers and things like that, let's start with the must-have gear to be protected on the Airsoft field. And number 1 is eye protection. Like I mentioned in episode 2, eye protection is non-negotiable. Make sure you have the right Insight rated goggles to make sure that you're protected on the Airsoft field. A mesh lower face protection is also a must. BB hits to the teeth can easily break them, and trust me, the dental bills are way more expensive than getting a good lower face mask. I've actually made a full video on lower face protection, so make sure to check that one out in the top right corner right here. Alright, let's get into gloves. A lot of beginner players overlook gloves, but getting hit on the knuckles, it can hurt a lot. So a good pair of gloves is, for me, absolutely necessary. It will not only protect your knuckles from getting hit by BBs, but it will also give you a better grip on your Airsoft replica. So make sure to get a good pair of gloves. Alright, if you take one thing from this video, then let it be invest in some good ankle protection boots. A quality pair of military or hiking boots with ankle protection will save you from rolled ankles, blisters and slipping all around the field. Please guys, invest in some good boots and don't run around in running shoes. Alright, now that we've covered the absolute essentials you need, let's look at how to build out your loadout. Now make sure to always keep this in mind. Gear should be comfortable, lightweight and practical. So in terms of on body, you've really got 3 options. A tactical vest, a chest rig or a plate carrier. Now a tactical vest will give you more protection and give you more storage, but can feel really bulky. Chest rigs are lightweight, small and really nice for mobility. Now plate carriers of course look the most realistic and they make for a good in-between between chest rigs and tactical vests. If you're just starting out, I recommend going with a chest rig or a plate carrier just to make sure you're nice and mobile and can move around quickly, but also can carry your mags and all your essentials. Now you could also get a battle belt, and I think for indoor play a battle belt will be enough because you'll just need to carry a few magazines. For outside play, I think it's a really nice addition to something like a plate carrier or a chest rig because you can strap your sidearm to it, add some extra mags and add a dump pouch. Alright, like I mentioned in episode 1, you'll need some more magazines for your primary replica. For outside play, I recommend carrying about 4 to 6 mags just to make sure you're not running out of ammo in a firefight. To store those magazines, of course, you need magazine pouches. Now, when searching for magazine pouches, just make sure they're nice and secure, the mags won't come out, and they're easily accessible. Of course, if you're running a sidearm, you'll also need some mag pouches for your extra pistol mags. Something optional to add to your airsoft loadout is communication gear. I only got this when I was into airsoft about 3 to 4 months, as it can get a little bit expensive. But if you're playing with a squad, it's really nice to be able to talk to your squad members.
Zitten er nog 2 op die bunker, daardoor kan ik niet doorpushen. Ja, klopt.
Now, in terms of communication, there's really 2 options. Of course, you'll need a radio, which I recommend the Baofeng UV5R. It's really cheap, but it will do the job nicely, and you can get it around 25 bucks, I think. So that's really nice. But in terms of headsets, you have 2 options. You've got a little earpiece you see those bodyguards wear when you're at a club or something like that. Those are nice to start out, but they're a little bit cheap and the sound quality isn't always the best. What you can also get is a little bit more expensive, which is a push-to-talk button and a big headset. These headsets most of the times also enhance the sound outside, so that's a really nice addition. Now, if you're just playing solo, communication gear is of course not necessary, but they can be a real game changer in Milsim or tactical play environments where you're playing with a squad. So if you're playing with a squad, look into it. Alright, next up is a dump pouch. A dump pouch is a simple but very useful accessory. A dump pouch is just a big pouch that most of the times hangs on your battle belt, and when you're reloading, instead of stuffing your mags back in your magazine pouches or even dropping them on the ground, you can just drop them into your dump pouch and leave them there. This way you'll know what mags are empty and you don't have to struggle with putting them back in their magazine pouches. Really nice for quick reloads when you're in a firefight. Alright, next up is hydration systems. I almost always take a hydration bladder on my back with a tube running to my front. Airsoft can be a physically demanding sport, and especially in the summer, in the Netherlands it's mostly 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, so it's really nice to have some water on you. You can just drink. Now, you can either run a water bottle on your belt or on your vest, but what I think is even better is a hydration bladder. This one will go on the back of your vest and will run with a tube to the front. So they make your loadout a little bit heavier, but they're really nice to drink from when in action. And a water bottle is just going to jump around and it's going to take a lot more time to take it out, unscrew the cap, drink, screw it back on and put it back in your pocket. So I think a hydration bladder is definitely recommended. You can get them really cheap for like 20 bucks, something like that. So yeah, if you can drink, that's really nice. Alright, let's get into some optional accessories. First one is a red dot sight. Of course, a red dot sight will help you aim faster and aim more accurately. It's not necessary because iron sights can work really well, especially in some smaller environments, but I think a red dot sight is a really nice optional accessory. Second one is a flashlight. The flashlight is of course only necessary when you're playing night games or in CQB environments. I've seen that on my CQB fields where I play at, it's an absolute must, as some areas are pretty dark and you can literally blind your enemies with your flashlight, which is really nice. So I think if you're playing a lot indoors, then it's definitely a thing to look into. The third optional thing is a tracer unit, which lights up your BBs when they come out of the barrel. This is really nice to see your BB trajectory, and again for night games. Last thing is a foregrip. Now, some replicas already come with a foregrip, which is really nice. But if they don't, I recommend getting a small form factor foregrip, which will massively improve your stability when aiming. Alright, now let's look into some things which are just a waste of money and you don't need them as a beginner. First one is excessive pouches. Don't overload yourself with stuff you don't need. Keep it to mags and maybe a radio pouch, and that's about it. Second item is heavy armor plates. Of course, they add to the realism, but this is not a real military situation and you really don't need them, so they're just a waste of money. I think they will make your airsoft games a lot more uncomfortable and it's just unnecessary, so don't invest in those. Last thing is expensive camo gear. Of course, it's very nice to look cool and all, but the camo isn't really necessary. So especially if you're on a budget, then make sure to just think about what camo you're gonna get in the future and make your plate carrier and things like that the same color, but don't invest in those crazy expensive camo sets yet, as playing in just some trousers and a hoodie will make your experience just as nice, and you can later upgrade to some camo gear. Right, today it's time to take things to the next level. We are going to look at different airsoft playstyles and different fields. Now, if you've never played airsoft before and are really just watching this video, I'd recommend going through the first 3 and then playing a few airsoft games. This way you'll know exactly what you like and what you don't like. And this way you'll better understand what's being said in the video right here. So finding the right field and right playstyle for you will make a massive difference in the fun you're gonna have when playing airsoft. I would encourage you playing at a lot of different fields when you're just starting out. And if you can, playing with a few different replicas and a few different playstyles. Many people just play at one field, adapt one playstyle and think that's it. But airsoft is so much more than that. So make sure you check out a lot of different fields and playstyles. All right, let's get into the different types of airsoft field. The first one is indoor and CQB fields. CQB, or close quarter battlefields, are mostly located indoors or in smaller urban environments. Games on CQB fields are fast-paced, intense, and you'll need some quick reflexes. The engagement distances of CQB fields are mostly very short and most of the times under 20 meters. This means most of the fields require you to shoot semi-automatic, and full auto is often banned. To win fights on a CQB field, you'll need aggressive movement, fast reloads and smart positioning. In terms of gear considerations, make sure to check the FPS limits because they're mostly a little bit lower in CQB fields. Make sure you have a movable and lightweight setup, and I would say face protection is the most important here because the minimum engagement distance is so short, so getting hit in the teeth or in the eyes is just so bad. It's very bad. So CQB fields are great for people who like action-packed games and quick movement. But you need to be comfortable with a shorter engagement distance and getting a little more pain. Alright, the second type of field is outdoor or woodland fields. These fields are much larger than CQB fields and are mostly located in big open terrains or in the woods. The engagement distances are mostly much longer, ranging from 30 to 60 meters and sometimes even up to 100 meters. So the FPS limits naturally are a little bit higher to get you more range. Games at outdoor fields and woodland fields are totally different, and they're really focused on strategy, positioning and team play. Since cover is mostly way more spread out, players must rely on stealth, teamwork and camouflage. For gear considerations, again, look at the FPS limits because mostly they're going to be much higher than within a CQB field. Look at mid to long range replicas or even sniper rifles, which can really improve that gameplay. Running around with a pistol on an outdoor field, it's a bit of a challenge, let's say that. For these kinds of fields, camouflage is really useful, so look into that. Now, if you love the idea of tactical movement, sneaking up on enemies and great teamwork, then outdoor and woodland fields are for you. Alright, let's get into urban fields. Urban terrain is mostly really nice because they combine the CQB and outdoor fields. They feature a lot of buildings, streets and open areas, which require the player to adapt between CQB environments and close range engagements to long range engagements when you're outside. So that's really cool. Again, in urban environments, teamwork and strategy are really important. These fields often also host Milsim events or military simulation events where objectives and tactics play a really big role. I would not recommend going to a Milsim event as a beginner, as you're just getting used to airsoft, so also worrying about objectives, tactics, things like that can be a little bit overwhelming. But it's really nice when you get a little bit of experience under your belt. Now, gear considerations to look into when going into an urban environment is a versatile loadout which can work in both CQB and mid to long range engagements. Go for mid to long range replicas or even go with 2, so a sidearm for CQB and a little bit longer range replica for the outside engagements. And make sure to get some really nice boots because the terrains are mostly rough there. So you can roll your ankles pretty fast. Now, urban fields are great for players who love a mix between CQB and the long range tactical play. So if you're into that, look into urban fields. Alright, now that we've talked about different fields, let's look at some different playstyles. Now, of course, every airsoft player has their own playstyle, and there's a lot of them. And as you go along in airsoft, you'll likely find a playstyle that suits you best. So Don't go for one thing before even playing it. Make sure to play a few different playstyles to see what suits you best. Alright, the first playstyle is pretty much the standard playstyle, which is the Rifleman. And the Rifleman is the backbone of any airsoft team. This is the playstyle most beginners adopt because it's very versatile and it's easy to learn. Riflemen engage in medium range firefights and often support their team by supplying cover and pushing objectives. Now, the best gear for a Rifleman is pretty much the gear we've talked about in the first few videos. It's a standard AEG, an M4 or an AK, maybe 4 to 6 mid-cap magazines, and of course a plate carrier or a chest rig. Alright, playstyle number 2 is probably the second most played playstyle in Airsoft, which is the Sniper, the long range specialist. Snipers use sniper rifles, mostly bolt action, to take down enemies from a longer range. This role requires patience, stealth, and a pretty deep understanding of things like wind, range, and positioning. I would not recommend this playstyle for beginners as it requires some pretty expensive gear and some pretty high knowledge, but it can't hurt to try it out for a game. So if you can, rent a sniper rifle somewhere on an outdoor field, I must say, with some longer range distances of course, and just try and play with it, see if you like it. Now, the best gear for a sniper rifle I would say is of course a good bolt action sniper rifle. A sidearm is pretty much necessary for when you get into CQB environments, and I would recommend a really small form factor chest rig for carrying your mags. Also, an optional thing of course is a ghillie suit, but also they can get a little bit expensive, so I would start out with just a normal camo set. I would not recommend playing in your normal hoodie and normal trousers with a sniper rifle, but to just start out and test it out, it's fine. Like I said, snipers rely on cover, and with a bright yellow hoodie on, you don't really have cover in the woods. Alright, the next playstyle is the support gunner with heavy firepower. This player carries an LMG or a light machine gun and can lay really good support fire for their teammate. Of course, an LMG has a lot of capacity, so be sure to buy a lot of BBs if you're going with an LMG, but support gunners are really nice in team-based play, where you can just keep your enemies pinned down and make sure your teammates can get to the objective. So it's a really cool playstyle in my opinion. Now, for the best gear for this, of course, an LMG, a Mark 249 or a PKM are your best options, I think. Get some extra box mags, maybe just 1 or 2 you can put somewhere on your body, and buy a lot of BBs, because these box mags will take 2,000 to 3,000 BBs at once and you'll go through them within a game. So make sure you get a lot of BBs. Alright, next up we've got the Designated Marksman or DMR. This is a little bit of a hybrid between a rifleman and a sniper. They use semi-automatic long-range rifles with a scope to take out enemies from medium to long range distances. Now, these DMR rifles mostly have a higher FPS limit than normal rifles, but they also have a longer minimum engagement distance. So make sure to check that with the rules of your field. I would say the best gear for this is a HPA setup, which can get a little bit expensive, or an upgraded AEG with a long barrel, so you just get that long range. Also, a good thing to get is of course a scope to pick off people at long ranges, and a sidearm. It's not as necessary as with, for example, a sniper rifle, but I think it's really recommended if you're playing on hybrid fields with both CQB and long range distances. Alright, next up is the CQB Specialist, which is a really aggressive playstyle. These players love using speed and aggression to overwhelm their enemies and shoot them first. Now, the best gear for this is SMGs, maybe something like an MP9, or even some upgraded sidearms with extended mags and things like that. Also, make sure you get a lightweight loadout, so a lightweight chest rig or even just a battle belt with a few mags on it. And make sure to wear good face protection, because your minimum engagement distance is going to be really short. So think about that. Alright, the last playstyle is the Recon or the Scout. These are the sneaky ones, but they're also, I think, the least played playstyle in Airsoft. Scouts really focus on stealth, flanking the enemies and gathering intel. They often use lightweight gear and silence replicas to sneak up on their enemies. Now, the best gear is of course something like an M4 or an AK, which is silenced, and an AEG or an HPA setup. HPA setups are more recommended because they can get so silent, it's crazy. Furthermore, like I said, a lightweight loadout and a radio for communication, because if you're gathering the intel, you of course need to give it to the rest of your team. Alright, so hopefully you now know which field and playstyle is right for you. If you like fast close-up action, go with the CQB field and go for the CQB specialist loadout and playstyle. If you prefer longer engagements and tactics, then go for a outdoor/woodland field and go for the rifleman playstyle. And if you're feeling good, then go for the sniper playstyle, but make sure to test that out a few times before you start. If you love teamwork and big operations, then urban fields and maybe even Milsim events will be the best for you. And then maybe even a support gunner, DMR, or even a recon will be the best playstyle for you. Like I said, the best way to finding out your playstyle is by playing different ones, playing different fields and seeing what suits you best and what you like most. This way you'll get the most fun out of your airsoft games. So a few tips for playing on each field type. If you're playing on a CQB field, then make sure to move quickly, use cover and keep your replica ready at all times. If you're playing on woodland fields, then make sure to stay low, move with your team and use natural cover. If you're playing on an urban field, then make sure to communicate with your team, control the buildings and be able to switch quickly between the short range and mid to long range engagement styles. Alright guys, that's a wrap for episode 4. Now you know all about the different fields and play styles that Airsoft offers. It's a lot, so make sure you test out a few and pick the one that suits you best. In the next episode, the last episode, we're going to talk about a little bit more advanced stuff like leveling up your gameplay and making your first upgrades to your replica. What is up guys, it's Jordan and welcome to the 5th and final episode of the Ultimate Airsoft Beginner Series. By now, hopefully you've learned a lot. You know how to budget, what to look for when buying your first replica, the essential rules and safety of Airsoft, getting the best gear and the best beginner loadout, and you figured out what field and what playstyle you're gonna play. But now it's time to take your gameplay to the next level, and also what first upgrades you should consider for your Airsoft replica. So let's get right into it. So a big part of getting better at Airsoft is improving your game sense, movement and communication. Here are some essential tips to help you play smarter and more effectively. Alright, let's improve your movement. Make sure to always stay low and use cover. The lower your profile, the harder you are to hit. So make sure to move from cover to cover and avoid really open areas. Next one is peek properly. Instead of exposing your whole body, lean out from a cover and make sure to only expose your replica and one eye to see where you're shooting. This way again, your profile is way lower and you're way harder to hit. Next one is move with purpose. Make sure to avoid any unnecessary movements that leave you out in the open. Make sure to always move with a plan. Last one is silent movement. Especially in urban and woodland environments, stealth can be a really big advantage. So walk heel to toe to reduce noise and avoid stepping on dry leaves and branches. Alright, next thing is improving your shooting and accuracy. First thing to always look at is sight alignment. Make sure your iron sights or red dot is always aligned so you have the best accuracy. Next thing is controlled burst. Instead of mag dumping someone, make sure to shoot in controlled burst or semi-auto shots. This will massively improve your accuracy. And of course, it will conserve ammo, so that's also nice. Next thing is to practice trigger discipline. Make sure to avoid any unnecessary shots that give away your position. This is especially useful if you're a sniper, DMR or even a recon. And the last thing is, of course, adjusting your hop-up. Maybe this is the most important thing. Your replica has a hop-up. It's different in all kinds of replicas, but if you search for your own replica, you'll definitely find where it is. You can adjust this hop-up to increase or decrease the backspin a BB gets when it comes out of your barrel. This way your BBs will go up or down, and what you want to do is adjust it just so it goes straight with a little up curve at the end and then it drops down. If you adjust it like this, you'll have the most range and the straightest accuracy. Like I said, search on YouTube for your replica and you'll definitely find a tutorial on how to adjust the hop-up. So the last part of improving your gameplay is tactical communication and teamwork. First thing is use callouts. Instead of saying over there and pointing somewhere, make sure you give a good description of where someone is and maybe even use the clock signals. So for example, enemy 12 o'clock behind the barrel. Your teammates will know exactly where the enemy is and take him out in no time. If you're playing a tactical game where silence is key, then make sure you've learned some basic hand signals. Basic hand signals can help you massively when moving through a building in silence and trying to stay undetected. Now the last one is really simple, is to simply stick with your teammates. If you're playing a larger game, a lone wolf will almost always get taken out by a squad. So make sure to stick with your teammates and push according to strategy. Alright, let's get into some first upgrades for your replica. Now let's say you've been playing Airsoft for maybe a few months and you want to improve the performance of your replica. Now you don't need to buy a whole different replica and spend $500, $600, $700 again on a better replica. What you're better off doing is doing some simple upgrades. The first upgrade I would always do is a hop-up bucking and an inner barrel. These two things combined will massively improve your range and accuracy. So make sure to check out some upgrade videos on YouTube for your replica and make sure that you get the right one. Like I said in episode 1, good BBs are an essential upgrade, if you want to call it that. They will avoid you getting gun jams and things like that. Now, with a little bit of a stronger hop-up and inner barrel, you can already start upgrading to a little bit of a higher weight in BBs, which will again improve your range and your accuracy. Alright, next is improving your motor and gears. Now, getting a stronger motor can improve your rate of fire and your trigger response. And changing to a higher torque motor can also improve the efficiency of your airsoft replica. Make sure the motor works with the gears in the gearbox. Most of the times the gears in the gearbox are of pretty good quality, but they're made for the motor that's already inside your replica. So if you're upgrading it, make sure to look into if you need upgraded gears as well. If you're doing upgraded gears, this is a little bit more of an advanced thing, and I would recommend sending it off to someone who has experience in it, because I've tried it and I failed. So yeah, it's pretty advanced. So make sure you know what you're doing. If not, go to someone who has experience and maybe look at what they are doing, and then you can do it yourself next time. Now, of course, what you can also do is do some training and some practice. While you can't fire your replicas outside of the airsoft field, you can do some basic training at home. So, for example, you can do some dry fire drills and practicing your gun handling, your fast mag swaps, and some good aiming. You can also improve your movement skills by setting up some little covers in your backyard maybe, and just moving from cover to cover to see how fast and how effective you can move. And maybe, I know you're already watching some airsoft videos, but try and watch them with some different glasses on. So try and really look for the strategy they use and how they move between cover. You can really learn a lot from YouTube videos, so make sure to watch them. And that wraps up the Ultimate Airsoft Beginner Series. You now have all the knowledge you need to get started, level up your gear and your replica, and improve your gameplay. If you've enjoyed this series, then make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I would love to hear in the comments what you guys thought was the best episode of this one and what things you would like to learn in the future. So stay safe, play hard, and I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Peace!